Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rare Conversations. I'm Rocky Sanchez Tirona, and I'm very excited to be here. As you know, this is part of a series of conversations in which we speak with a range of experts who are expanding the field of conservation. And today we're going to be talking with the Executive Director of the Monterey Bay Aquarium, scientist and passionate conservation leader, Julie Packard.
Rocky, it's great to be here with you today. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And here today we're here to talk about climate change and the ocean. And Julie, you're in California. You're really witnessing up close both the impacts of what's happening to our ocean, and at the same time the fires that were burning all summer. How has it been for you?
Well, it's been a rough summer here in California, especially with the fires, on top of everything else going on in the world. And, just a reminder here in our state, which is a Mediterranean climate, already very dry with 40 million people living here that require a lot of water. Climate change is really affecting, the snowpack and our mountains, and of course the health of all of our forests, and the fires have really been devastating. But of course, most people mainly, when they think about climate change, they think about what's going on land. And right here on our coastal ocean, we're also really seeing impacts as well, which has been pretty interesting. The aquariums had some great long-term research going on in the kelp forests along the coast, and also a lot of satellite tagging of some of the top predators like white sharks. One thing we're seeing just these last couple of years is the juvenile white sharks coming much further north than they used to because the water temperature is warming. They used to only hang out in Southern California, and likewise the kelp forests, which are just an anchor to so much of the biological productivity along this piece of coast, where we're what's called an upwelling zone, a lot of cold, nutrient-rich water, very rich biota. The kelp forests have been taking a hit. They've been declining because of ocean warming. So a lot of species shifts happening north, to go to the cooler climes, and it's happening right now. We're seeing it.
Yeah, I saw that article, and I understand it's not very good news for the otters, right? Because the sharks are suddenly all over the place.
That's a really really interesting story for our institution, the aquarium, because we have two big programs. One is about recovering the imperiled sea otter population, and the other is about protecting white sharks. And the two intersect because as there are more white sharks and they're coming more north where the sea otters live, we see a lot more shark strikes on otters. So and less kelp where the otters usually hide. So these ecological changes can just change the whole show. It's fascinating to watch it in action, and in this case, maybe not in a good way, but I don't know. I mean, the shark populations are growing, so the sharks are doing okay, even if the otters are not.
Yeah, no, I think we see that species shift even in the Philippines as well,
Yeah.
where the fish are really starting to move to colder waters, and we're really seeing much less of the kinds of species we used to.
Yeah, is that affecting the fish that people want to catch? Or
yeah.
I
So
mean,
there,
what catch to eat? I mean,
yes, and overall, just really less fish in general, and that's really affecting the livelihoods of the fishers. In our case, I think there's a lot of coral bleaching that's also happening, and we had a bleaching event last year, so a lot of coral is dying off, and that's really been wreaking havoc on habitats. So people fishers are having to move further away just to catch the same amount of fish they used to.
Yeah, going further offshore. That's a typical story in habitats like the ones that you're talking about. So that's real. It makes it really rough. I know one of the projects that I visited in Indonesia that are our family foundation supporting around the blue swimming crab, the fishers are having to go further offshore, and their boats don't go that far offshore. So,
Right.
there's some basic logistic issues with that sort of,
Yeah. Yeah.
with those changes.
That's brought up a lot of tension really around the rights of fishers, because normally that area should have been reserved for fishers on smaller boats, but since they've had, and then the bigger fishers or commercial fishers are actually further out, but
Right.
the fish are now more available to the larger boats, so that's been tough. Yeah. So, any other kind of like big impacts that your scientists are seeing on the ocean overall? I know your scientists have been doing a lot of research around this.
Yes. The Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, or MBARI, which is the aquarium's partner institution, has been doing long-term studies along this coast for 30 years now, and a lot of their work is really, indicating changes going on under the surface. And honestly, the climate change related changes happening in the ocean at large are in my mind the most serious thing we have going on with climate change. And I mean, I'm just so concerned about all of that, because it affects, it affects life, Earth's life support system, and the oxygen production and so many other services that the ocean provides for us. So what we're seeing, well, first of all, I mean, the climate, it's not climate, it's greenhouse gas emission impacts on the ocean kind of fall in three categories, as I'm sure you know. You've got the warming, and we already talked about that and those changes. You have the acidification that's happening in the water because of CO2 buildup, and MBARI's doing a lot of study on that, and actually, looking at in small scale, what does more acidified water, how does it affect behavior even of ocean animals, and for example, their ability to escape prey. The more obvious effects that people read about are the effects that happen to animals that use calcium carbonate shells and have to accumulate and make shells. All the from the oysters we eat down to the tiny little plankton that have those shells. And so those are serious impacts that are happening right now, and that are affecting oyster farmers actually, even on a commercial level. The smaller scale impacts, these behavioral impacts, though, are happening as well. They're more subtle, and so that's those are huge issues. And the other thing that's happening is the layering of the ocean, where the oxygenated layers are changing, and the ocean's becoming less oxygenated. And MBARI has a long-term data set looking at not only where the animals live in Monterey Bay and all the way down this coast of North America, but how that relates to these low oxygen areas, which are not only a place that a lot of animals can't live, but in the annual migrations of all the plankton that happen every single night, largest migration on Earth, it's a huge piece of the ocean ecosystem. The animals have to make it through a thicker and thicker section of very low oxygen, and so that's a profound change that's happening as well. That's totally out of sight, out of mind. So all of those functions are changing, kind of silently, and in a way that we can't even see. But in terms of the basic ocean connection, why we need the ocean to keep working on our behalf, it's absorbed 90% of the excess heat produced since the Industrial Revolution, and the current systems and the living ocean is needed for that. And obviously the oxygen production is and the CO2 absorption is happening by living creatures, the plankton that live in the ocean. And so we need a living ocean, not a dead ocean, put simply, for all of nature to survive into the future. And the carbon pollution is unfortunately having a big impact on that, and not in a good way.
Yeah, no, I think we're all really feeling it. Maybe not necessarily at the level you're describing, because a lot of us aren't privy to that. But at the same time, the poll tells us that 57% of our audience here are alarmed at the state of our oceans, and 40% are concerned. So it's actually been it's we know there's really a problem. So maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the solutions that both your organization and ours are working on. And we really do share that same I think perspective, and we know that we can't save the ocean unless we put people at the center of things. And so the Monterey Bay Aquarium really connects people to the ocean, not just physically, but also socially and emotionally, in order to inspire action. Can you talk a little bit about how that connection has led to people taking action for you?
Yes, absolutely. So the mission of the Monterey Bay Aquarium is to inspire conservation of the ocean, and that means inspire people to take action on its behalf. But as you say, that's hard to do because the ocean's really out of sight, out of mind. Even though most of us live on the coast, the notion has always been, it's so big we can't possibly impact it in a negative way. So at the aquarium, when we began, we were all scientists, and we're like, people need the facts. If we tell them the information of what's going on, they'll take action. And of course, we've learned over time, society has learned too, by the inaction we see all around us, that doesn't really work. And so what we find with all of our social science research at the aquarium is that it's really it's really a matter of getting people to have an emotional connection, and to value, to be exposed to something and to value it. And so that's where an aquarium can be really powerful. And we really try to focus especially on exhibit experiences that do evoke an emotional response, or giant kelp forest exhibit, or all of our jelly tanks, which we've kind of been the real innovator about bringing some of the little known and really beautiful animals. We have a big octopus and cuttlefish and squid exhibit right now, cephalopod exhibit, and these animals are just so beautiful. And you don't even need to hear the stories of their crazy, fascinating adaptations to fall in love with them. So that's really what we're aiming toward. And then also, though, people want it to be, they want to know what to do. Once they get to the point of, wow, I care about this, and now you've introduced that, this place is amazing, these animals are beautiful. Now you've told me, well, they're in trouble. What can I do? Now I'm going to be frustrated soon. How can I, or guilty, or all of those emotions. So what we've been really working on the last 10 or 15 years is giving those really simple actions that people can do. I mean, not everyone wants to, run for city council or something. What is an easy thing to do? And so we've really gotten to be, for an aquarium, really involved in policy and advocacy, a lot of, in a way that usually an NGO would do, but our audience loves it. I mean, we have a big audience, and after they spend time with us, they want to take action on things like choosing the right seafood, or even if there's an important ocean policy bill happening in the state of California or in Washington, to weigh in on that. We can help, guide them to weigh in with their legislators, and or to work in the schools with activating the youth to do projects that are, whether it's raising money for a cause, or promoting a plastic straw ban in the local town. All of those are things that are ways to channel people's engagement that's what leads to change.
Right. No, and I think you touched on it a little bit. The idea of the seafood watch and the consumer guides that you've put out, I think, is really something that has changed the way consumers in North America, at least, are thinking about their food, and you know that's really important. Can you share a little bit about how these seafood ratings have really played out in changing consumer behaviors?
Yeah, sure. I love to, Rocky. I'm a huge fan of the Seafood Watch program and all that the team has achieved. And first of all, uh, it is, as you say, it's been a 20-year effort, and a lot of other NGOs and great people have been involved in this incredible momentum that has happened in the world waking up to, you know, the state of fisheries on the planet, and that you know, the vast majority of our wild fish are being overfished. I mean, we reached maximum capacity 40 years ago now, you know, of catch of wild fish, and since then we've just been bumping along and exploiting the ones that aren't overfished yet. And so the idea behind Seafood Watch was to engage the consumer market in the U.S. to shift towards and by creating a demand for sustainable seafood, because the U.S. we do a lot of fishing, but we import 90% of our seafood from places like nations in the Western Pacific, and a lot of small scale fisheries, and of course also some of our favorite seafood items. Shrimp is in the top 3. All of that shrimp is farmed, not all of it, but the vast majority is farmed. And again, nearly all of it in developing countries. So the idea being to, you know, develop a consumer demand, and which in turn will influence the retailers. And so after the consumer demand started to gain momentum, we and other NGOs started working with the big retailers in the US, the Walmarts, the Targets, the Safeways. And today, 85% of those big retailers have made time-bound commitments to only sell sustainable seafood, which is amazing. And then more recently, the past few years, we've been taking even up a notch and working with the big buyers. So because now that the demand has been created, the question is, where is all the sustainable seafood going to come from? And that's where Rare's work also, I mean, I know Rare works a lot with small scale fishermen for, sale in country, but also there's huge economic security that is engaged with the global fish market, and so it's not only obviously it's not only people feeding themselves in their own countries, but as if not more important, having access to markets that want sustainable seafood. So we're working on that side, while organizations like Rare are working in country to to create the sustainable products. So an example of that, Seafood Watch in the past few years has been working in Vietnam with the shrimp farmers mainly in the Mekong Delta, and specifically with a big shrimp producer, Min Fu Seafoods. And the company has made a commitment to bring all the shrimp they're producing up to a Seafood Watch green, which is best rating, best sustainability rating by 2025. And that's it's an amazing goal, and it's it's involving over 10,000 shrimp farms. So in that way, you're going to get aquaculture to be more sustainable, which has important positive impacts in so many ways. And then we can link up the markets with all that sustainable product. So that's what Seafood Watch is all about. Right now, the team has assessed, I think, 85% of the seafood by volume in the global market, the globally traded seafood, and aiming to do all of it. And then aquaculture, of course, has become a big focus more recently, because while I was saying that wild caught fish plateaued out decades ago, aquaculture is continuing to grow, and it's a great thing, and it's going to provide a lot of food, a lot of food security, a lot of economic livelihoods, but it can be done in a really damaging way, and needs to get itself in shape to not harm the environments where it's done, and to be healthy for people as well. So we're excited about work happening on that front as well. In Chile, on the farm salmon, to reduce use of antibiotics, for example, and really getting a lot of commitments from the businesses engaged with those enterprises.
Yeah, I think one of the key takeaways we have from your success with Seafood Watch is that even in small scale fishing communities or in not very sophisticated domestic markets, it's possible to at least create awareness about basic fisheries management that people can get behind and support, like, you know, not catching juveniles, just or not using destructive gear. So in some of our communities, we actually have very rudimentary rating systems within the community. We try to teach the community that, you know, don't buy fish that are too small and undersized, because you're just harming your own food supply. So that's been really good.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool to know. I mean, there's just a long way to go, but you know, it feels like it's going to happen, as Rear knows, you know, community by community. And then, you know, once it's working, you know, once you've got a thriving local fishery that's recovered, you know, hopefully the next community will pick up on that, and we'll spread the progress.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about, Julie, is you know, you've pointed out that the ocean is so vast and the solutions are really sometimes hard to understand. I really relate to that. My background is actually communications, and I had to learn the science when I went into conservation. You know, the Packard Foundation came out with Heartwired, a guide for change makers that is really about kind of sparking action by connecting to the heart. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how you manage to bridge, you know, from tough problems, complex solutions, and then actually creating an ocean conservation ethic? I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am since I started getting involved with the aquarium, and especially after we opened, I would often observe, you know, the hardest part of building an aquarium was not figuring out what was going on behind the glass, and all the species you wanted to keep, and understanding them, and how to keep them healthy. The most challenging animal in the aquarium was on the dry side of the glass, that being us, the human animal. And you know what I mean by that is that we are such a mystery in terms of what motivates us, and I've always just been fascinated with the research, the social science research around that. And of course, the past couple decades, there's been an increasing amount of really cool, like, brain science research going on too, that's kind of even telling us more. The fact of the matter is, you know, like, why haven't we taken action on climate change and overfishing and deforestation and all of these environmental issues? That is the big question at hand. And so what the Packard Foundation has found over time is that a lot of the NGOs doing this work, you know, they all have the same question, and the aquarium, we have the same question. And so we funded a study to really try to characterize, especially among diverse populations, people of color, youth, kind of those that are not traditionally super engaged with the environmental movement. The environmental movement in the US, you know, was founded by baby boomer white people, pretty much, you know, grew up in the 70s. And so now in today's world, I mean, we've got to wake up and you know, expand the circle and engage everyone. But that required really understanding, you know, what would motivate, what was the connection that these people had to the ocean. Like, all of us have a different connection is the thing. And so what the research came at was really this idea that people are, as they call, heartwired, meaning the values to, you know, we all grow up with values that are from our experiences and our childhoods and all of this background experience in our lives that influences our attitudes about the ocean. And the title of the study, called Heartwired to Love the Ocean, that's what it was all about. What does that mean? It means that, what they found was, some people really revere and value the ocean for its serenity. They have wonderful memories of quiet, peaceful times on the beach. And for those people, work that angle of the beauty of the ocean. Others feel it's God's creation, and we should invoke a more faith-based approach to, why you might care about the ocean and want to value it. Others might have a more, family-oriented, this is a place where I want my family to be able to come, and my grandkids and their grandkids. So the idea was really to frame it from the human perspective, not from the science at all, and to really do the research to understand, what people are thinking and how to come at it. And it's something we've really done at the aquarium since day one. As I said, since I started out, as a natural scientist, as a biologist, marine biologist, and realized, wow, we have so much to learn about people, and what engages them, and what they really care about, and what can get them in the heart, so they actually feel motivated to take an action, even if a small one, like, order the right seafood in their personal lives.
Yeah, no, I really like your six ocean mindsets. And for the audience, I think might be good to point out that the Heartwired to Love the Ocean is downloadable, and it's a really good resource. I think those six ocean mindsets are things we see at play even in the campaigns that our partners run in the communities. In some places where faith is very strong, they always have messaging to their communities about how we have to be stewards of God's creation. But in other places, it's more about family values and kind of like, this is building a better life for our families together. So I totally get what you mean. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's cool that you're from a communications background, Rocky, because I've always all the NGOs that our family foundation funded over the years, we kept thinking, wow, these people can't afford communications folks, and they all need to do market research, because the aquarium, we've always invested in a lot of market research, because we have to figure out what people want to see to come visit, and we have an earned revenue model that and both from a mission perspective, we see 2 million people a year coming through the aquarium, and we really need to know what they're, as much as we can, about what they're thinking, and what'll bring them coming back, so we can give them some more messages. And they're not going to come back to see get their next dose of like depressing climate change information. They're going to come back to see the sea otters or something warm and fuzzy that speaks to them in that way, and then we can like help them take the next step.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's so important to really understand the underlying insights and motivations, right? In our work, a lot of the behavior campaigns that we do are really founded first on like a lot of qualitative and quantitative research to really help, I think, not just us, but our partners really understand and think about their audiences a different way. Because if you're a resource manager, you're a government employee that's trying to implement fishing regulations. Sometimes it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of the fishers and really kind of think, what does he want out of this whole situation, right? And then that's what they need to work towards together. So that's really great. So maybe the next thing, Julie, I just wanted to talk about was really, on the eastern seaboard of the Philippines, we work a lot with communities that are facing the Pacific, and right across from you in California. So on both sides, we're really feeling the impacts of climate change, and it's really interesting how we're taking different but complementary actions to respond and to adapt. What do you think are the most critical solutions that coastal communities need to be working on today?
In terms of adaptation, you're talking about, I assume. Well, it is, I mean, clearly on the other side of Pacific from where we are, the whole sea level rise situation is, it's already happening big time, and it's really, it's really an unbelievable situation that people living there are having to deal with. In California and 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 the west coast of North America, it's a little different, if only because of like the nature of the geology here, and how we don't have a huge amount of super low lying territory, except of course where the cities are. So the main thing happening here on that front is is really about land use. When you have and the same in Southeast Asia too. I mean, you have these huge mega cities, and big pieces of them are going to be underwater. And in the U.S., I would say, probably kind of happily compared to some places, at least we have pretty sophisticated land use policies in place. They've allowed way too much development, and development in the wrong places, like say in the Eastern Seaboard, where hurricanes keep coming time after time and people still get to rebuild their houses at great cost to the taxpayers and great peril to the environment. But here, I mean, generally in the West Coast, we have very a lot of progressive, very environmentally focused voters, and so what's happening here is a lot of legislation around land use along the coast. For example, we have for the first time in the coastal land use plans in our areas, they have to take into account sea level rise and figure out some kind of adaptation plan in terms of what development is allowed. And then of course, kind of at the higher level, we all would really like the U.S. to become a leader in terms of global climate change policy, which it is not right now, as we know. And so what's happening is, the action is all at the state level, and California has really been the leader, at the state level. So, we're just continuing to pass the most progressive climate legislation that we can, and our governor is really on the forefront of all of that. So, those are the main things, that come to my mind around it. There are others to think of, and it's just, but all of the small island nations and the low-lying cities in Asia, that's just such a heavy lift. I mean, we have that in Miami, obviously. We have that in some of the Eastern Seaboard, and we have that in California, but not. First of all, it's just in our urban areas. They're not. They're in cities that hopefully can muster the money to figure out how to adapt. The infrastructure issues are perhaps even bigger, and our Seafood Watch program, I know, is working with the partners that we have in places like Vietnam for all the aquaculture farms, and what is the infrastructure how are they going to work that out, and how that can get to a better place. And honestly, the link in those nations, the developing countries where we're working, India, Indonesia, and Vietnam, doing the aquaculture development properly, it is a big win for climate change, because it means maintaining or restoring all the mangrove forests, which are going to protect everyone from the increasing severe storms that are happening. So that's a win all around. And of course, mangroves also sequester carbon, so that's a win. So I'm excited about that connection. I think that could be, the mangrove forests are being decimated, as you know better than I do, and I think that's a real opportunity to get more focus on that. Would be great. So, but what about you? I mean, you have a lot going on in the places where you're working right now.
Yeah. No, so I think that you mentioned mangroves, that's one piece. It's really kind of like getting the communities that we're working with to understand the importance of all these habitats. So mangroves, coral reefs, and the seagrass beds are really something that they also kind of, yes, we are living with decades of destruction, and so kind of having to restore that and really start protecting them, I think, is one of the biggest ways that that they need to focus on. So setting up reserves as well, but then at the same time helping them understand that the fishing practices, including overfishing, destructive fishing, are really also having an impact on making the ecological systems a lot less resilient than they could be, right? So it's really about making that connection, that the actions that they're taking today, even as they go about providing a livelihood for their families, will also need to be there in order to help them adapt to the impacts of climate change in the future. So you're right, it really will take community action on all fronts. It's almost time to start taking questions, Julie. I think my key takeaways for today is that, whether it's taking steps to protect the resources as communities in the places we're working in are doing so that they become more resilient, or choosing leaders who actually push for greater action, as you're doing in California, making conscious choices in our diets, or just learning and celebrating the diversity of ocean life in the aquarium. I think it really points to the fact that communities can do something about climate change and how it's impacting the oceans. So maybe this might be a good time to ask the audience to type into the chat box whether they've heard anything today that helps to make them feel a little more hopeful and a little less alarmed about the ocean. So that'll be something to look into later. But before we shift over to, there's some questions piling up here. Is there any last thought or insight that you want to share with the audience before we take the first question, Julie?
Well, one of the things I'm glad that you brought up the importance of marine protected areas, and ocean resilience, because the hand of humans has touched the highest mountain and the deepest part of the ocean, and so there's really no pristine ecosystems left on Earth. That being said, that's why it's more important than ever that we do rally around creating some areas that are going to maintain the biodiversity to enable, resilience in the face of all these ocean changes. So that is super important. And then I guess just, final thought for the audience, a few people, getting behind an idea can really change a social norm. And that's what we're working to do, change social norms so that we live more lightly on the resources on the planet. And the sustainable seafood movement is an example of that. That's really having a big global impact. And there are so many other examples of that we all can get moving in our lives. So I thank everyone for their interest in even being here to talk about these issues in the ocean, which is feels like a big problem, but we can solve these problems. I guess the final thing I'd say is, the thing about overfishing, especially, we know how to do it right. It's not a mystery. It's not a mystery. You need the science and the stock assessments and the proper fishing methods, and the ocean is very resilient. It can recover, and we can enjoy our seafood, whether it's food security or a nice meal once in a while at a fancy white tablecloth restaurant. So I'll leave it there, Rocky. Thanks, and we can take some questions.
Thank you. Yeah, the first one is kind of a fun one. somebody's trying to peek into the books behind you on your shelf. So,
Oh,
so they will ask what you're currently reading.
oh, what I'm reading Enrique Sala, who hopefully a lot of your listeners might know, who's a National Geographic explorer. He just wrote a book called The Nature of Nature, and really good. It's really a good read. He's a good writer, and so that's what's on my. That's what I'm reading, and I'm also actually reading a lot of. I've been reading the past few months a lot of books about history of racism in the U.S. and how to move toward a race equity culture at the aquarium and in the country. So that's been really first and foremost a lot of learning to do.
For somebody on the outside, I actually am really so impressed at how so many Americans have embraced that need to educate themselves that way, given the issues that are coming up. So I like that. The second question on the chat box is, what role can digital tools play, like interactive websites or virtual reality? What role do they play in communicating the link between the ocean and climate, especially to those who can't access an aquarium or the ocean in person? It could help us get more important messaging to so many people, but then how might we provide a more localized ocean climate solution? I think that was the two parts of the question.
Yeah, two parts, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that the COVID pandemic was just caused an explosion of use of digital platforms by institutions like ours that previously were informal science education institutions, museums and aquariums. You have to come to a place and to get the messages, and Monterey Bay Aquarium has been closed for 7 months now. And so we, like others, have really stepped up and are just doing a whole lot of really cool digital experiences that are really interactive. And our education team has switched over. We have a big education team that does K-12 programs and also programs for teachers and teens, and that's all switched to digital. So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in terms of digital engagement, and also I guess I would add the youth movement, which we haven't mentioned, which has just been so amazing to watch around climate, and all the young people. I mean, they're out there doing their digital advocacy and building groups and networks and engaging youth, in informal ways. In a way that I think is really exciting. It's not about, some tech company is designing some product, that they're gonna like sell and inform everyone. I mean, it's just people are more and more, they're really fired up about these issues. They're really concerned. Here in the U.S., there's been a lot of frustration in the last few years, as our U.S. audience listeners know, about environmental issues and about our lack of action on climate change. And I think that's just driving a really great organic movement that is all digitally driven. And the other part was about local solutions. Was that the other part of the question?
Yeah. How do we provide more localized ocean climate solutions?
Yeah. Again, I mean, I think these two questions they're probably linked, because what I've observed is, where you have a local leader or a local group, whether it's a community leader or even just a community member that gets really fired up about something, that's when things escalate, don't they? I mean, when you think about community-based NGOs, they've all been founded by some passionate person that just got really fired up about stuff. So, you've got the top-down government solutions that are, say, with land use planning here, like all the coastal communities have to do a land use plan, and it's up to each community to say what they're going to do about climate adaptation. So I guess that's kind of a local solution. But when you're talking about doing it in developing countries, I think it's really just got to start by firing up, a few people. It's back to where we started. Who are the champions of it? And here also we have the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is kind of an example of that. That's just local groups, no kind of staff or anything, that meet and fire up about local climate solutions, which is advocacy, but also maybe, getting their community to promote, solar panels on the roof or whatever it is. So.
Okay, all right. The next question is has to do with the fact that RARE is actually targeting to reach 1 million fishers eventually as we scale our work. And the question is whether there's a way to connect the engagement among that 1 million fishers and Monterey's 2 million visitors. Is there a way to leverage that and use it to scale engagement?
That is a really interesting question. I mean, I've never really thought about it, but I think it's a really cool idea. I thought maybe where you were going was, the connecting the fishers. I mean, obviously the different NGOs working internationally on improving fishing practices are collaborating. Certainly, Seafood Watch is, a platform that's used by all these groups, but ultimately mobilizing the fishers to ask their government, where we hope to go is, by these local voluntary initiatives, fisheries improvement projects, and places and communities where they are migrating toward a sustainable fishing model. Once that's successful, what we would all hope is then they are going to the government side by side with the NGOs to lobby to lock in those regs, after they've been ground truth. So, in that way, I think people can, in that way they all link up, because ultimately you need some policies. I mean, the thing with the ocean is, no one owns it, so it's kind of a free for all. And one thing that is known, that has been shown, is, there's a huge, there are predictors of sustainable fishing, and one predictor is you have to have data, and another obvious predictor is you have to have management. And when you look across the world where fisheries have recovered, or where they're doing okay, and North America is finally, we're in the recovery mode, but obviously we have other countries, Iceland, New Zealand, Australia, others that have had good fisheries management, and you have to, there are steps that need to be taken that it can be done. It can be done everywhere, which is, obviously, where knows that. That's why you're working on it.
Yeah, no, in Palau, one of the campaigns that we were supporting actually mobilized the 100 or so fishers that in the community, and they actually went to Congress in support of the big national protected area that was declared a few years ago. So it was kind of such a powerful statement. I think the nature of the question was actually maybe on the other side of whether Monterey Bay Aquarium's visitors would have any interest in kind of learning about kind of the side of the work that fishers do to improve how their oceans are managed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, we're doing a lot of that already with the, in promoting info about Seafood Watch, and in the aquarium, like the main info that's being shared, is what they can do to help drive the demand. That's absolutely true. But we do a lot of communications work about the in-country work and the stories, of success that are happening. And yeah, I mean, I think more and more, I mean, we are trying to engage people in those stories. They're such great stories. They're so hopeful. I mean, they're super cool, and they show how we're all connected, doing this work together. So, I mean, I can't say a lot of them are interested in seeing the sea otters, not gonna lie, but yes, more and more they support the aquarium. Our members and constituents really, support us for the mission as much as anything else. And that's happened over time, kind of as we've grown our conservation work. In the beginning, it would be, they want to be a member so they can have quick access to go see the sea otters.
Right. Yeah, no, I think Monterey Bay Aquarium has really gone beyond being just an aquarium in that sense. And people think about it really as a, a leader and kind of like a way to connect with the ocean on a more broad scale. I think the next question here is, let me just read it. For Julie, is there compelling evidence of the long-term impacts of aquarium visits and behavior change, or changes in attitudes towards conservation, towards ocean conservation?
There are a few fairly long-term longitudinal studies, but not nearly as much as we all would like. And but there definitely are some studies that have happened. There was one a few years ago, actually. It was aquariums and zoos together. It was called, the impact of, an aquarium visit. That, not even so much long term, but and yeah, so there is evidence. It would be great if these institutions could, up their ability to spend money on more research, but yeah, the data are there. I mean, it's about, the connection with, connection with live animals and the sense of caring. I mean, it's a lot of the interpretive designers now are really focusing. There's a whole body of work about empathy, and gosh knows, the world needs more empathy, generally speaking. And we all need more empathy for each other. And one of the things that that a lot of us are doing, especially in our interpretive exhibits aimed toward younger children, is to really surround this idea of connecting with animals. Probably the same thing with having pets, helps develop empathy at a young age, which in turn, extends to a sense of empathy, and having empathy as a value for all living things, including all the people around you later in life, which, as I said, would be a noble goal, whether it's for a conservation outcome or just a better world.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take the next question. There's a question here for me around, in my work as an ocean conservation advocate, I've experienced issues within the ocean that it can be abstract for many people. Often conservation is responsive or defensive, whereas planning or preemptive community planning seems more sustainable. Do you know of any cases of local communities, or does RARE work in any, to create any sort of ocean steward councils that are made up of broad groups of stakeholders? Yeah, no, so definitely, that's kind of like step one in the work that we do. When we engage with a local community and they agree to work with us, the first thing we do is actually build a technical working group represented by, not just the fishers, but also the village leaders, the women in the community, the buyers and the traders, and they're the first group that kind of learns about the situation that they have. They look at the data, and then they set goals for what they want for their community, and that's really, I think, the way to embed this this work in moving forward, because we can only facilitate that process, but afterwards they're going to have to take it on and own it, right? And then continue the work moving forward and make decisions and kind of like develop plans and enforce them down the line. So I think that's really important as well. What else do we have? Okay, so I think we're getting near to the end of the time. And you know, it's been wonderful talking to you, Julie. I think, you know, it's really nice to really see how your work and our work kind of like get at the same core of really touching people to help them understand what the situation is and kind of the problems that we're faced with here, both in terms of climate change and the oceans, and then really sparking action and creating those opportunities for people to contribute and channel their energy. I really like what you said about kind of like even just walking into the aquarium, they take away and they kind of say, what can I do? Is it about policy and supporting the lawmakers? Is it about the choices that I make in my own life? Is about contributing to the work of groups like ours? I think we're all connected, and the ocean is such a vital, you know, it plays a vital role in our life and our survival. So I think, thank you everyone for attending. If you like this, if you enjoy this experience, I invite you to support RARE's work to help us continue to inspire change so people in nature thrive. Likewise with the aquarium, please stay tuned for details about the next RARE conversation. Thank you, Julie. I think, you know, it's been wonderful. If there's anything you want to say.
Well, congratulations on your work, Rocky. It's been really, really great to spend a little time with you. It's fabulous. And for all the listeners here today, wherever you are, you can connect with the aquarium in these times or anytime if you go on our website, because we have a lot of we have 10 webcams and a lot of cool programs and interpretive things going on at all times. So or follow the social media feeds, but it's a great way to stay connected with the ocean while we're all sheltering in place and going a little crazy. And so yeah, check it out.
Yeah, no, my daughter is very jealous of aquarium keepers that are stuck in aquariums over lockdown.
That's funny.
The best place to quarantine, she says.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, maybe she should come be a volunteer. Well, I'll tell you, actually, if you talk to our animal care staff, they are so exhausted right now, and they're so envious of all the staff to get to work at home. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of work taking care of all of the animals we have, especially because so many of them are just very, very specialized and just require a lot of crazy specialized techniques. But anyway, it's they do an amazing job.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Julie. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.